From the website Technocracy, a French woman has revealed she's in love with a robot and is determined to marry it. Lilly's partner is a robot called InMoovator, who she 3D printed herself and has been living with for a year. On her Twitter page, where she goes by Lilly InMoovator, she says, quote, "I'm a proud robosexual. We don't hurt anybody. We are just happy." Now, Lilly is reportedly engaged to the robot and says she'll marry when human-robot marriage is legalized in France. She said she realized she was sexually attracted to the robots at the age of 19 because she disliked physical contact with people. My name's Howard Riell, and this is Riell Truth. You're listening to the American Freedom Network, streaming live around the world at AmericanNewsNet.com and on Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, Twitter, RiellTruth.com, and in the book, Riell Truth, Stay Angry. Of course, as always, broadcasting out across the Colorado Front Range on KHNC, Johnstown, Colorado, 1360 AM, The Lion. Our call-in number, 877-254-7524. My friends, what about this? Here's a woman who's in love with a robot, and she wants to marry the robot. Now, here's my question. If you're allowed to marry who and what you want, after all, people argue, hey, it's my life. I have a right to do what I want. Okay. Can she marry a robot? Could she marry an old sneaker? What if she wanted to marry a worm? Would you tell her she couldn't marry a stapler? Or do people have a right to do things so bizarre, so strange, that it dwarfs the imagination? Well, here's my position. You can call and disagree with me if you wish. I think some things are simply abnormal. Now, I know that word has gone out of use today. There are some things that show mental disease. And rather than saying, hey, guys, do what you want, it's your life, freedom, 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 why don't we say, guys, obviously you need help. And because we are caring and compassionate people, we're going to see to it that you get that help. Isn't that a better response than telling people who want to marry robots or sneakers or you name it, that what they're doing is fine? Now let's take that elsewhere in life. What other decisions do people make that are completely weird, completely self-destructive, and yet they hide behind their freedom of choice to do so? Maybe we need to intervene a little bit. Instead of patting them on the head and telling them everything will be okay, maybe we need to tell them everything won't be okay. It's Wednesday, and it's Riell Truth. I'll be right back.
Informing you that heart attacks in women can be different than heart attacks in men. Women having heart attacks will experience nausea, vomiting, indigestion, shortness of breath, or simply sudden and extreme fatigue, but no chest pain. Get emergency medical help and call 911 immediately if you are experiencing any of these symptoms.
I'm growing fallout tonight over a United Nations resolution.
Back or arms that last more than 5 to 10 minutes. Unexplained shortness of breath lasting more than 5 to 10 minutes. Sudden severe nausea, vomiting, or indigestion. Sudden sweating for no reason. Sudden unexplained extreme fatigue. Loss of consciousness or fainting. Or sudden unexplained of doom. The key, ladies, is to listen to your body. Follow your instincts, and if you experience symptoms that are disturbing to you in any way, or even remotely related to your heart, get yourself checked out right away. If your doctor brushes you off,
the other thing that came out over the last couple of days,
one who will actually do what is necessary to get to the bottom of your symptoms.
The other thing that came out
of Loveland Health and host of the Healthy Nature Hour, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. I'm an expert in nutrition, immune system, and I specialize in chiropractic. In my professional experience, the triune to vibrant health are a balanced musculoskeletal system, integrated nervous system, flowing lymphatic system. This has been a secret too long. For more information, call Dr. Z, 970-667-4669, lovelandhealth.com.
I am equal to the task, my friends. And we are back with said task. Howard Riell Truth. My Christian friends out there, Christmas has just gone by. I don't know what gifts you got for Christmas or what gifts you gave, but I know what gift Barack Obama gave to America for Christmas. Here they are talking about it on the Alex Jones Show. Here we go.
Well, it was a Merry Christmas indeed, and Santa Obama slipped a little gift under the tree for us this year. It is the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017. I'm joined in studio now by David Knight to talk about this. David, what worries you the most about this little gift left from Barack Obama?
Well, what worries me the most, Owen, is that it isn't just Obama. This is something that the GOP has pushed very heavily for. This is something that has been developing for a number of years, going back to 2012, the NDAA Act then. Of course, the thing that was in everybody's attention at that point in time was the indefinite detention by the military without trial, without accusation. But there was also something else in that. And at the time, it was reported by Business Insider, by Michael Hastings, who has now been assassinated, I believe, by the American government, the intelligence services. They were pointing out that Congress was seeking to lift a ban on propaganda. At that time, they put into the NDAA something that would effectively nullify the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which they put in as a prohibition against propagandizing Americans. So in 2012, they stopped the prohibition of government being involved in propaganda. And we said at the time, InfoWars said CIA will now openly propagandize Americans. And now here we are 4 years later, they have set up a structure to actively do that. So first 4 years ago, they removed the ban. Now they have gone proactive and said, this is how we're going to do it. And they've funded it to the tune of $160 million for 2 years.
And what they actually did here was very sneaky, not just bringing it in on Christmas Eve. I guess, Barack Obama wanted to play Santa this year. But the original bill was H.R. 5181. A lot of people brought attention to this. But instead of actually passing that bill, what they did was they inserted it essentially the same thing or the same goals into the NDAA for fiscal year 2017, specifically Section 1287, the Global Engagement Center. Now, there's all kinds of nuts and bolts we want to get into there, but real quick, just to go back to the HR 5181, now what they did here was they had to change the name of this bill to Countering Foreign Propaganda Act. That's not the original name of this bill. That was a recent title change, and then you go and you look at the actual text, it mentions foreign governments, including the government of Russia, using disinformation and other propaganda tools to undermine the national security objectives of the United States. David, this seems like something that has been long in the works here.
Yeah, as we pointed out earlier, and you and I were on the radio show talking about this, there's been 100 years of propaganda from the American government. It was the American government that invented propaganda. It wasn't Goebbels. We had a good 20 years on them thanks to Edward Bernays and Woodrow Wilson, somebody that I think Obama resembles more than any other president because he's going to remain in Washington just like Woodrow Wilson did. He's a committed globalist just like Woodrow Wilson. But this is something that was developed in the United States. And as we talked about when we did that Countering the InfoWars Act, because that's the way it started out, countering information warfare. Then they changed it to countering foreign. They've got to get that foreign in there, Owen, because that's the enemy that we've got to be protected from. And then talking about propaganda, because nobody likes propaganda. But let's remember how the American government created this. And I find this whole thing about creating a global center under the direction of the State Department, I mean, that is absolutely Orwellian. Absolutely Orwellian.
And let's look at some of the text here. Let's disseminate some of this text. Now, we're going into Section 1287, the Global Engagement Center of the NDAA Act that Obama just passed. A2, the purpose of the center shall be to lead, synchronize, and coordinate efforts of the federal government to recognize, understand, expose, and counter foreign state and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts aimed at undermining the United States' national security interests. They completely ignore the DNC, completely ignore Hillary Clinton's private server. But the main word that sticks out to me, David, is non-state propaganda. Are they basically opening the doors to put out their own propaganda? They're admitting they want state propaganda to run it.
Oh, absolutely, Owen. As if you look at it, what they're going to fund is they're going to fund private institutions to do this as well, just like we've seen non-governmental organizations used for Soros's color revolutions, used by the State Department abroad. These are the people who have created revolution throughout the world. These are people who have created regime change. We've seen how that's worked out in Libya. We've seen how that's worked out in Syria. We see what's happening in the former Soviet Union. They say this legislation will establish a fund to help train local journalists, provide grants and contracts to NGOs. These are the type of people that Soros has used in his color revolutions, civil society organizations, think tanks, private sector companies, media organizations, other experts outside the U.S. government. In other words, anybody that will push forward their propaganda war. And we have to remember that it was about 6 years ago that Cass Sunstein, and we talked about this earlier, was talking about the necessity to nudge us. Yeah, they didn't want to come at us directly. Instead, they wanted to develop a choice architecture where they could manipulate our choices by the information that they gave us. That is called propaganda. That's something that has been perfected by American advertising, thanks to Edward Bernays and others, and that is something that the American government prohibited previously, prior to the 2012 NDAA Act. They removed that prohibition. Now they have set up a structure to do this. I find it very concerning that this is being run by the State Department, one of the most anti-American, one of the organizations that has run revolutions throughout the world. Now they're bringing that revolution home. And as we heard from the founding fathers, they said the means of fighting tyranny abroad will be, of fighting wars abroad will be brought back as tyranny at home. And that's what is happening with this. It's the weaponization of this.
Well, my friends, he's absolutely right. I don't want the federal government getting involved in free speech. The whole idea of the Constitution is that the federal government should keep its hands off of speech. Hence, it would be free. If the United States is now getting involved in propaganda, well, you know how the federal government handles propaganda. It spews it. It supports it. It worked hand in hand with the big media in this past presidential election to put nothing but propaganda on just about all of the televised news networks. So this should be very disquieting. I don't want you to just know what you've heard on this show. I want you to get on the internet and research the hell out of this. The government has been itching. It's been yearning to get its hands on free speech, whether it's the internet, whether it's quote-unquote fake news. And now they are taking steps to do that. I can't believe that it will go forward once Donald Trump gets in office, but who knows? Donald Trump will be the president. He won't be God. And there are still ambitious, power-hungry people in the government doing God knows what. We'll take a break, and we'll be back with more Real Truth.
And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness of him and cried out, saying, This was he of whom I said, He who comes after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 14 and 15. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. Article 1, Section 10.
Census, the uniform people in creating civil police, firefighters, EMTs, and 9/11 dispatchers who work in our community. We thank them for doing a great job keeping our area a better place to live, shop, and raise a family. We realize their job is dangerous and sometimes dangerous. This message is from Census, the uniform people in Greeley. Call 352-2233. They're on the air because they care. Named one of the most admired outsourcing companies in America. Census, the uniform people in Greeley. Piccolo's Restaurant in Denver reminds us that over 750,000 children were reported missing last year. Over 58,000 of these were abducted by non-family members. Keep an eye out for youngsters at play, and if you see anything suspicious, contact the authorities immediately. This message from Piccolo's Restaurant in Denver. It's not only the best Italian and Mexican cuisine, it's the people who care. Give them a call at 303-757-5166. 303-757-5166. Piccolo.
right, guys, welcome back to Riell Truth. I want to give you what was a news alert earlier today on Fox News involving Donald Trump, involving Hillary Clinton. Well, I'll let them explain it to you. Here we go.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, December 28th. I'm Abby Huntsman in for Ainsley Earhart this morning. We begin with a Fox News alert. The White House says it wasn't me. The Obama administration again denying its involvement in that anti-Israel resolution, as Secretary of State John Kerry is set to make a speech that could make tensions a whole lot worse.
And Jill Stein isn't the only one refusing to give up on the 2016 election. Jill Stein just will not go away. Michael Moore says he has a 5-step plan. And on that couch in that basement will be appearing live with us. And if we can't, Brian already made his contribution to that.
It was enough
right there. Yeah.
Well, this story about the United Nations and talking about real big stories and actual news is interesting in terms of the anti-Israeli resolution that passed last Friday. Every day there's been a new development, and a huge one is coming today in terms of Secretary of State John Kerry giving this speech, 11 a.m. Eastern, from the State Department, where he is going to lay out sort of the Obama administration's vision for Mideast peace, although after what happened last Friday, how in the world can you come up with Mideast peace now? You can argue that it's gotten a lot harder because of what happened in terms of the Israel bashing that was going on.
Yeah, I mean, the speculation is that John Kerry's speech, which has been moved up, is effectively going to double down on the contours of this resolution, which most see as anti-Israeli, but they probably think is laying the groundwork for some potential hypothetical peace deal. But they're also denying involvement. They're denying that they were a part of the abstention in this UN vote that was so anti-Israel. And this is the State Department spokesman Mike Toner yesterday, Mark Toner, excuse me, talking about how they were not involved. Take a listen. We'll chat about it.
The notion that the United States was the driving force behind this resolution, that's just not true. The United States did not draft this resolution, nor did it put it forward. We also made clear at every conversation, that the president would make the final decision, and that he would have to review the final text before making his final decision. So the idea that this was, again, pre-cooked, or that we had agreed upon the text weeks in advance is just not accurate.
So the reason they're now on the defense, this all comes from Israel saying this was cooked up from the very beginning. You have President Obama actually leading this charge.
That was like a tortured non-denial. And when you hang it on, we weren't involved in the specific.
We didn't technically write it.
Okay, so we weren't involved in the language, but there's a report this morning saying Vice President Biden was on the phone, for example, calling the Ukrainians saying, "Let's get this going, guys." Now, the White House hasn't commented on that, but
Israel has.
Israel has, because we had David Keyes on last night on the Kelly File, the spokesman for the Israeli Prime Minister, further saying that they did have proof about this. Here's what he said.
We know that there was a deep collusion between the Obama administration and the Palestinians in order to push this United Nations Security Council resolution forward. I don't think that everything that I know can be shared on TV or can be shared with a global audience. I want to explain just very briefly why it's so dangerous, because it actually preempts negotiations. It tries to give the Palestinians everything they want up front. The idea that the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem, the Western Wall, is occupied territory. I mean, what if somebody brought a Security Council resolution saying the heart of Washington was occupied territory, or the London Bridge was occupied territory?
Look at what the State Department says, which is this convoluted quasi-denial. Then you hear all these Israeli spokesmen saying, we've got evidence and we're going to prove it. And they know, because they understand how serious this is. This isn't just a UN resolution on paper in New York City. This is land and the existence of a country. We've got a map of Israel and the pre-1967 borders, of course. Israel had to fight for its existence for decades, surrounded by enemies like Egypt and Syria and Jordan. The pre-67 borders make Israel extremely vulnerable, giving away critical land, including portions of Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, that include the old city and the actual Temple Mount and the Western Wall, the holiest sites of Judaism, and the Golan Heights there in the north. That's not academic. If they don't hold that, the huge portions of their entire country are under siege.
Well, now it sparked this huge debate more broadly about the UN and what the purpose of the UN is, and do they have something against Israel specifically? This was really interesting. One of our producers who covers the UN. He emailed us this information yesterday. He said just a snapshot over the past year that the UN has adopted 20 anti-Israel resolutions, and you compare that to just 4 for the rest of that entire year. One was North Korea, one was Syria, one for Iran, and one for Russia. Just look at that. That is a snapshot of just this past year, what they have been focused on.
20 times you're going to denounce Israel, and once you're going to announce Iran, the big state sponsor of terror. Give me a break.
Just let that marinate for a second. Look at those numbers. Put that back up if you can. 20 anti-Israel resolutions at the United Nations, which we spend billions on every year. The world is on fire. Syria, Aleppo, ISIS, North Korea, Russia is invading Ukraine. Iran is seeking nuclear weapons. 20 against Israel. It tells you this is not an organization.
Because
the UN is not an organization that exists anymore to educate and healthcare. It exists to bash the West. And Israel being the sort of canary in the coal mine, the easiest target for them. And if Israel doesn't have the U.S., they've got no guarantor.
And coming out of that UN action, John Kerry giving this big speech today, Mark Thiessen last night on the Kelly File pointed out, with 3 weeks to go, why is the administration doing that? 3 years ago, they could have actually been taking some of the hard steps to get us closer to peace. Instead, on the way out the door.
You know what I think, Ed? I think all of this could backfire because obviously underneath it all, it is politics. And you had, as Mike Huckabee said, I think was the right thing. He said this was basically President Obama giving the big middle finger as he's walking out the door to Israel. You could see President-elect Donald Trump doubling down even when it comes to strengthen our relationship with Israel and his friendship with Benjamin Netanyahu. This could backfire.
You could see the embassy literally moving to Jerusalem, which would have a lot of ripple effects. But why now? I think they were counting on Hillary Clinton. They were counting on a slow roll extension of their policies, moving more and more toward the pro-Palestinian stance, distance from Israel
a little bit.
Of course they're acting out. They're going,
you made the interesting point. Had Hillary Clinton won this election,
they wouldn't be throwing these rhetorical bombs right now at Israel. Instead, they'd be trying to set the table. So what they're doing is they're trying to leave this big mess for Donald Trump.
I think Donald Trump's going to do a very nice job cleaning that up.
We'll see what John Kerry has to say later today. But let's go over to Lisa.
I can't wait to hear what John Kerry, please educate me on the Middle East. Lisa, educate the world on our headlines.
I will do my best.
Well, I will do my best, and that's better than Lisa Booth will do. My friends, anti-Semitism in the United Nations is nothing new. America's partnership with the anti-Semites, the federal government's partnership with anti-Semites in the UN is unfortunately nothing new. Barack Obama and the Democrat Party's inherent, visceral anti-Semitism is nothing new, which makes me wonder, and I've talked about this with people I know and respect, and they can't make any more sense of it than I can, why the large majority of Jews vote Democrat. I just don't get it. And that's why when I post something on Facebook, go to my Facebook page. You'll see them. Riell Truth Radio on Facebook. When Barack Obama does something that's destructive to the United States, to Israel, what have you, I'll post it and I'll say, good work, Jewish Obama voters. Because I just don't get it. I don't get the lack of thought, the lack of insight, the lack of intelligence. Of course, in the larger perspective, that's exactly what's been shown by the American electorate in voting for Barack Obama twice and all the people who voted for Hillary Clinton once. So, if I could put something in the water to make everybody smarter, I would. I'd take it myself first. But at least I'm smart enough to know who my enemies are. Item from the New York Times, Dateline DC. Corey Statham had $46 in his pockets when he was arrested in Ramsey County, Minnesota, and charged with disorderly conduct. He was released 2 days later, and the charges were dismissed. But the county kept $25 of Mr. Statham's money as a, quote, booking fee. It returned the remaining $21 on a credit card subject to an array of fees. In the end, it cost Mr. Statham $7.25 to withdraw what was left of his money. The Supreme Court will soon consider whether to hear Mr. Statham's challenge to Ramsey County's fundraising efforts, which are part of a national trend to extract fees and fines from people who find themselves enmeshed in a criminal justice system. Unquote. My friends, arrested, released, and it cost him money? Screw that! Why should the federal government, why should any government, any local government, keep any of his money? His charges were dismissed. What claim does the local government have on this guy's money? What claim does it have on your money or mine, other than the fact that it's got the power and we don't. Item from Anti-Media, Dateline, Houston, Texas. Local activists attempting to hand out food and gifts were shocked on Thursday afternoon when Houston police forced the homeless to throw away the donations. Around 1 p.m. on Thursday, several individuals met in downtown Houston to distribute plates of hot food, blankets, and other supplies to the city's growing homeless population. Soon after, the Houston police arrived on the scene of 2 different intersections where the homeless advocates were giving out gifts and food. According to witness testimony posted on Facebook, the police instructed the homeless to throw away everything they'd been given. Quote, not only were the police called, but they brought a large waste management truck and are forcing the homeless to throw away their food, pillows, and other items, reads one post. My friends, are you mystified? Well, in a certain sense, I am too, but then again, no, because this is the government. And as we know, government is almost always stupid and bureaucratic and wasteful. And the idea of taking food and supplies away from homeless people, absolutely unthinkable in the United States of America. Who's going to do something about it? If you're saying Donald Trump, well, he's got enough on his plate nationally. Who on the local level is going to see to it that outrages like this can't happen? Item from the Associated Press, Dateline, New Orleans. Mayor Mitch Landrieu says that to ensure that truck-driving terrorists cannot get to the city's biggest New Year's crowds, much of Bourbon Street will be pedestrian only. He says trucks will block intersections from New Year's Eve through the Sugar Bowl on January 2nd. Landrieu says the city also will bring light towers, security towers, and many temporary security cameras in the French Quarter and some in other areas, unquote. My friends, we have surrendered. We have surrendered to the Muslim terrorists. They want to infringe on the way we live. They want to make our lives miserable. They want to confuse and confound our society, and we're letting them. We now live in a security lockdown society. So let me ask you a question. Do you want to live in fear for the rest of your life? Do you want your children and their children to live in fear for the rest of their lives? What's that you say? You don't? Are you saying you don't think Americans should have to live in fear? Well, I'll tell you, I agree with you. So what do? How do we solve this problem? On the one hand, we're afraid of Muslims committing acts of terror. What's the solution? Terror committed by Muslims. It would seem to me, I'm only from Brooklyn, that you couldn't have Muslims committing acts of terror if there were no Muslims around. Make sense? So, we can do one of 2 things. We can ban Islam, shut the mosques, declare that Islam is a cult instead of a religion, and just get the hell rid of it. Or we can live in permanent lockdown for the rest of our lives. Someone says the wrong word, people scatter. Airlines shut down flights. Airports close. Trains shut down. We can live like timid, scared rabbits the rest of our lives, or we can take bold, decisive action and save this country. To me, it's a no-brainer. Item from thenewamerican.com. A United States naval midshipman, David Farragut, commanded a captured British vessel during the War of 1812 at the age of 12. Now major universities provide healing spaces with Legos, coloring books, Play-Doh, and puppies for students who, quote, can't handle Donald Trump's election victory. Why, we might say today's little snowflakes need to man up, but watch out, that term is verboten on some campuses because supposedly it's offensive and distressing. What's really distressing is that many quote-unquote adults today aren't half the boys that our ancestors were. My friends, there are huge problems in this country. And one of the hugest problems is right in our own homes, where our kids are growing up to be effeminate snowflakes. And what is it we're doing about it? Exactly. We'll be back.
Reasons to
deposited into the bank owns the money, and the depositor is merely an unsecured creditor of the bank, which means if the bank goes under, you get paid last. After the financial crisis, instead of breaking up too big to fail, the government and the Federal Reserve created Dodd-Frank and made too big to fail banks even bigger, while putting your deposits more at risk. I'm Joe Jakeman, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group. To learn more, visit us at allamericangold.com or call us at 800-951-0592. Now this is the testimony of John when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Messiah." And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" And he answered, "No." The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 19 through 21.
No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. Article 1, Section 10.
Elizabeth Locker Plan and Elizabeth reminds our listeners that the drug problem is well documented. We know our kids will be approached at early ages. We want to applaud the youngsters in our community who have had the strength to say no to drugs. They provide examples to their peers and families to be the best they can be. That's from Elizabeth Locker Plant, located at 366 Grand Street in Elizabeth, serving our area since 1943 and specializing in naturalized aged beef and pork and complete custom processing. Call 303-688-2240. That's 303-688-2240. Piccolo's Restaurant in Denver reminds us that over 750,000 children were reported missing last year. Over 58,000 of these were abducted by non-family members. Keep an eye out for youngsters at play, and if you see anything suspicious, contact the authorities immediately. This message from Piccolo's Restaurant in Denver is not only the best Italian and Mexican cuisine, it's the people who care. Give them a call at 303-757-5166. 303-757-5166. Piccolo.
All right, guys, welcome back to Riell Truth. Howard Riell behind the microphone. Waiting for the music. All right. My friends, if you are a white male like me, you've got a hell of a nerve. No, you didn't do anything wrong, but how dare you be a white male in the 21st century yet? Now, I know there's something wrong with being a white guy, because MTV told me that about a week or so ago. They put out a video advising white guys how we can improve in 2017. Well, I've already weighed in on this video and the obnoxious things that it says about where our younger generation is going. Here's another white guy, so take it with a grain of salt. Wait, the salt is white too, so never mind. Here's Ben Shapiro on the Ben Shapiro Show talking about MTV's resolutions for white guys. Here we go.
The other thing that came out over the last couple of days is, of course, this insane video from MTV. So MTV released a video of a bunch of people who you would never want to associate with in real life. Like people who, you just look at them and how smug and self-satisfied they are. And you think, I would not want to be within 100 miles of these folks. MTV released a video of resolutions for white guys for 2017. They're telling you what your resolutions should be, because there's nothing more ideologically fascistic than telling other people what they should aspire to be in the coming year. Here's MTV informing you. Remember when MTV used to put on music videos? Remember that? Yeah, not anymore. This is what it is now.
It's about to be a new year, and here's a few things we think you could do a little bit better in 2017.
First off, try to recognize that America was never great for anyone who wasn't a white guy.
Can we all just agree that Black Lives Matter isn't the opposite of All Lives Matter?
Okay, so, sorry, Austin is running back and forth to TV screen to computer. It's amusing to watch. I'm going to continue this pattern. I love that the first gal gets up and says, can we agree America was never great for anyone who wasn't a white male? No, we can't agree on that at all. As a Jew, with ancestors who are Jews, I can pretty much agree America is the greatest country that God ever created. And by the way, for black people living in today's America, America is the greatest country that God ever created. And even during Jim Crow, America was a much better country for black people than the vast majority of countries around the world, which is not a case in favor of Jim Crow, God forbid. But to suggest that America was never great for anybody except white men is just a bunch of crap. I mean, how about white women, by the way? White women have had it better in America than any place else on earth. I mean, America is heaven for white women. I mean, white women now earn more than white men. White women are going to college at a higher rate than white men. Even in the supposedly horrific, terrible, horrible, terrible 50s, women were actually pretty happy, if you look at the polls, of female satisfaction, because they were living in a prosperous country. And what a bunch of nonsense. And then this woman says, can we just agree that Black Lives Matter doesn't just mean Black Lives Matter, all lives matter is not a response to Black Lives Matter? No, because the entire Black Lives Matter movement is predicated on the notion that black lives are specifically under different assault than other lives in the United States by white people, and that is not true. And then I do love the fact that where they go next in this MTV video is they say, Black Lives Matter, you know, it doesn't, all lives matter is not a proper response to Black Lives Matter, because of course all lives matter, but we're just talking about black lives now. And then the next thing they say is that not all lives matter.
Black lives just matter. There's no need to overcomplicate it.
Also, Blue Lives Matter isn't a thing. Cops weren't born with blue skin, right? I mean, yeah, they weren't born blue.
Stop bragging about being woke. Stop saying woke.
Learn what mansplaining is, and then stop doing it.
Oh, and if you're a judge, don't prioritize the well-being of...
Making Austin run back and forth is really amusing. Okay, so don't use woke. Okay, how about you stop using woke? It's obnoxious and no one knows what the hell you're talking about. Yeah, oh, you're woke. Woke to what? Did you awake? Did you wake up? What? Why are you using a passive verb in place of an active one? In any case, I do love the idea. Don't use woke. Also, stop mansplaining to us. Stop mansplaining to us. Mansplaining is the stupidest word that anyone ever created, mansplaining. Okay, it's called an explanation. If a man is doing it and it is worthwhile, that does not mean that he's doing it as a man. Okay, men used to have a word for women-splaining. It was called nagging. Okay, this routine... But honestly, it's such silliness. I mean, continue it, because these people desperately. This is Donald Trump's re-election ad right here, and it's fun to watch.
An Ivy League athlete over the woman he assaulted. We all love Beyonce, and yeah, she's black, so of course she cares about black issues. I'm talking to you, Fox News.
Feel free to take Kanye West, though. You guys can have him.
You know what you did, Kanye. Nobody who has black friends says that they have black friends.
And just because you have black friends doesn't mean you're not racist. You can be racist with black friends.
Look, guys, we know nobody's perfect.
But honestly, you could do a little better in 2017. Some of you guys do a great job. Some of you don't.
Please, because 2016 is bad. 2017 can't be worse than this, all right? Because this is bad.
Okay, I'm going to listen to the black guy with the cat on his shirt telling me about what it means to be a better person because he's a black guy with a cat on his shirt. That's basically what this comes down to, right? I mean, this video comes down to, it's a bunch of not white males lecturing white males, and that's okay because they have moral superiority because they're not white males. Here's my question. What do these people actually do? Does anyone know any of these people? Like, I don't know any of these people. I don't know them from Adam. I don't care what color they are or what their sex is. It doesn't matter to me. Do they do decent things? I mean, for all I know, these people, there's a series of axe murderers that they went to San Quentin and dragged out of prison to lecture white males. The idea that these folks are granted some extra legitimacy because of their color or because of their sex, what a bunch of absolute nonsense. I also love the...
My friends, think about that. Hang on 1 second. Think about that. These people are given more credibility and their words have more value because of their race. Where have we heard that before? Long time ago in America, white people were given more credibility because of their race. And people screamed, rightfully so, racism. It was racism. So now the left is using racism again. They've revived racism, only they think since it's in the opposite direction, somehow it's better. Let me do a shout out to the people at MTV and to the people who watch MTV, okay? This is for you. Schmucks. Schmucks. Racism is wrong. Racism is always wrong. So to say we don't like your racism, so we're going to replace it with our racism, is just as repugnant, just as odious, and frankly, just as brain dead. So if the millennial generation wants to have a hope of living well in the coming years, they need to think better. They need to actually learn from the mistakes of the past rather than simply repeating them in a different version. And yeah, I'm old enough to remember when MTV played music. Now they're lecturing races on how to be better? Are they going to come out with a video about how blacks can be better in 2017? About how Asians can be better? Of course not. It would be ludicrous, as is this video. And Ben Shapiro does a great job of pointing it out. Folks, just say no. Remember that? I'm old enough to remember, just say no. Well, just say no to racism 100% of the time. Not just when it goes against you and your group, but when it goes against any group. The old expression, if it's not good for all of us, it's not good for any of us. We'll be back.
And of his fullness we have all received, and grace for grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Yeshua HaMashiach.
Days after the Security Council voted
No
to
one has seen
condemn
God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 16.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution.
Census, the uniformed people and creating civil police, firefighters, EMTs, and 9/11 dispatchers who work in our community. We thank them for doing a great job keeping our area a better place to live, shop, and raise a family. We realize their job is dangerous and sometimes thankless. This message is from Census, the uniformed people in greeting. Call 352-2233. They're on the air because they care. Named one of the most admired outsourcing companies in America. Census, the uniformed people in Greeley.
If catastrophe struck, would your family be prepared? Are you confident you wouldn't react in a panic? Is there one place to get all of your emergency supplies? Barra Survival encourages you to have confidence through preparation, not panic through crisis. Barra Survival, located at 3366 South Broadway, is a professional, reputable, full-service business providing quality, realistic preparedness supplies at an affordable price. Go online, stop by, or call 303-781-0343. Barra Survival.
All right, guys, welcome back. More fallout from what Barack Obama is doing in the UN. Here is Lou Dobbs tonight from last night. He's got a guest host sitting in. Don't sweat it. Let's listen.
President-elect Trump is lashing out at the United Nations 4 days after the Security Council voted to condemn Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Former UN Ambassador John Bolton is among our guests tonight. He calls it President Obama's parting betrayal of Israel. Also, a historic visit. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visiting the Pearl Harbor Memorial with President Obama to pray, but not apologize. We'll have the latest. And who are these people? Shopping malls nationwide in chaos as brawls break out among shoppers. We'll have a full report. And good evening, everybody. I'm Tom Sullivan in for Lou Dobbs, and we begin with a historic meeting at
in South Korea and many of the NATO nations. They owe us tremendous. We're taking care of all these people. And what I want them to do is pay up.
Analysts believe Trump's comments have created a level of uncertainty among leaders in Tokyo, who, like Abe, have long dealt with the complicated internal politics of America's military presence in Okinawa.
Excuse me, Mr. Abe, what's the uncertainty? Where is that coming from? You're receiving a service for which you must pay. Where's the uncertainty? Well, in Mr. Abe's defense, the uncertainty might come from the last several presidential administrations, which said to Abe and to others, hey, we've got unlimited money, we'll pay your way. Well, those people were fools. We never had unlimited money. We've got even more limited money now. And so it's time for Japan and other countries like grown-ups to pay their own way in life. Makes perfect sense to me. Back to the video.
But while Trump's suggestion that Japan assume more of the burden for its defense would be a departure from existing U.S. policy, experts doubt the rhetoric will alter reality.
They have common interests, have common values, and they are threatened by a country that has challenged both Tokyo and Washington, and that, of course, is China. And I think that will be an important element of the glue that keeps these two nations marching forward together.
Still, it was Abe who was the first world leader to greet Mr. Trump after his victory in November, a sign that even if the dynamics change, the relationship, one of America's most important, will endure. Importantly, and perhaps most poignantly, the president today recognized veterans of World War II, many of whom were right here in the audience. The greatest generation who served so bravely that fateful day, a day they'll never forget.
While Israel already is reducing ties with countries who supported the anti-Israeli resolution, which Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called a, quote, shameful ambush, President-elect Trump slamming the United Nations over the vote, tweeting, and I quote, the United Nations has such great potential, but right now it is just a club for people to get together, talk, have a good time. So sad. About a quarter of the UN budget, about $3 billion, comes from the U.S. annually. Well, joining me now, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN and American Enterprise Institute Senior Fellow John Bolton. Mr. Ambassador, what's your reaction to? I mean, that's where you hung your hat for a number of years. Is it just a place to get together and talk and have fun?
Well, I had fun when I was there defending American interest. Probably not. Other people didn't have so much fun. But look, this was a clear abuse of the UN to disadvantage Israel. The Obama administration's abstention on this resolution is a repudiation of 50 years of bipartisan American Middle East policy. It steps in to try and tilt the scales in favor of the Palestinians as against Israel. And it rejects this 50-year-old doctrine called land for peace, which is that Israel gives back the territories that it won in wars that were that are directed against it, and in exchange it gets peace. So I just can't think of a worse way for the Obama administration to go out. It's going to be a significant resolution. I think the Trump administration is going to have to work hard to mitigate or reverse its consequences. It's just a needless tragedy and reflects, I think, Obama's basic ideology.
Well, I don't expect you to understand why he did this. You can't read his mind, but it just seems odd that usually at the end of your administration you kind of go out gracefully. What this does set up, though, is the opportunity for Donald Trump to come in and make a correction, make sure that what the policy is between the U.S. and Israel.
Well, I think by definition, at noon on the 20th of January, relations between the United States and Israel are going to improve dramatically. The problem with the impact of this resolution, and by the way, other things that Obama may do between now and January the 20th, will be to disadvantage Israel because of the resolution's provision that basically authorizes and encourages nations and things like the European Union to impose their own national sanctions against Israel for economic activity on the West Bank. So the harm that this resolution is going to cause, I think, is going to be pervasive. I do think there are things the United States should do to make the countries that supported it and the UN feel the consequences. Cutting off financial contributions to the UN is one way to do it. But this was a gratuitous act. As you say, you think normally presidents go out gracefully. I don't think Obama knows what that means. And that's why I say I remain worried, perhaps beginning with what may come in this speech that Secretary of State John Kerry will deliver tomorrow, perhaps in the French-sponsored peace conference in Paris that will begin of all dates on January the 15th, 5 days left in the Obama administration. I'm just worried the damage is not finished yet.
Well, let's talk about the UN itself, because President George W. Bush, when he was talking about all the resolutions that the UN had come up against Saddam Hussein, and he said, don't become irrelevant. Is the UN irrelevant?
My friends, the best thing that could ever be said about the UN is that it's irrelevant. And even that's not completely true. It is a den of scorpions. It is evil. You heard the video before. 20 resolutions this year against Israel, 1 against Iran, which sponsors terror worldwide and is working on a nuclear missile program, 1 against those other third world death holes. The United Nations is a snake pit. It needs to have been shut down years ago. America, which is in a financial bind, should save the billions of dollars it spends on the UN every year. Spend it, what? That's right. Spend it on Americans. We'll be back.
He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 10 through 13. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. This is the America News Network. Elizabeth Locker-Plan and Elizabeth reminds our listeners that the drug problem is well documented. We know our kids will be approached at early ages. We want to applaud the youngsters in our community who have had the strength to say no to drugs. They provide examples to their peers and families to be the best they can be. That's from Elizabeth Locker-Plan, located at 366 Grant Street in Elizabeth, serving our area since 1943 and specializing in naturalized aged beef and pork and complete custom processing. Call 303-688-2240. That's 303-688-2240. Piccolo's Restaurant in Denver reminds us that over 750,000 children were reported missing last year. Over 58,000 of these were abducted by non-family members. Keep an eye out for youngsters at play, and if you see anything suspicious, contact the authorities immediately. This message from Piccolo's Restaurant in Denver is not only the best Italian and Mexican cuisine, it's the people who care. Give them a call at 303-757-5166. 303-757-5166. Piccolo.
Welcome back to Riell Truth. Item from Breitbart. Liberty University President Jerry Falwell Jr. is defending President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of State, former ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson, after he faced backlash from the evangelical community. Quote, His position on social issues, I don't believe, are relevant in the position of Secretary of State, Falwell said during an appearance on Fox News. I don't think he'll ever have to weigh in on any of those issues. I think he's going to be out cutting deals like he did as the CEO of a global enterprise with Exxon. I think that what we need in that position, I think that's what we need in that position. I don't think his position on social issues will ever make a difference as Secretary of State. Unquote. Absolutely correct. It's just one more thing for liberals to yammer about. Item from mintpressnews.com in the final hours before Christmas holiday weekend. U.S. President Barack Obama quietly signed the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act into law and buried it within the $619 billion military budget. Is a controversial provision that establishes a national anti-propaganda center that critics warn could be dangerous for press freedoms, unquote. We talked about that before. Item from Breitbart. The famous Cathedral Square in Cologne has been turned into a so-called security zone for Christmas, with armed police and secure checkpoints aimed to prevent potential terror attacks. Christmas in Cologne has been placed on lockdown, with armed police out in full force in the square outside the imposing Cologne Cathedral, which celebrated Christmas Mass Saturday evening. Several police vans were highly visible, including officers armed with submachine guns guarding the main entrance to the cathedral. Unquote. Item from WorldNet Daily. If a father shoots his adult daughter in the head 3 times while asleep in her bed, then claims it was an accident, sounds too bizarre to believe. Something like this couldn't happen here in America, or could it? Authorities say that's exactly what happened in Rocky River, Ohio, September 27th, leaving the community in shock and disbelief. Last week in court, Jamal Mansour, 64, pleaded not guilty to aggravated murder charges, and his attorney reaffirmed the same reason for the shooting, a mere accident. My friends, we've heard about Muslim men killing their daughters before, have we not? We have. Was it accidental? I'm asking you. Doesn't seem to me it was accidental, but what do I know? Mr. Mansour says it was accidental. Was it an honor killing? Well, I really don't know, and so I can't say. But it's a question that now must be asked, since honor killings have happened so often. Anytime a Muslim father kills a Muslim daughter, the question has got to be asked. And so I'm asking it. Do you think it was an honor killing, or do you think it was an accident? Do you think that there will be an attack in public on New Year's or not? The questions are really the same, because what the question really is can we be secure, can anyone be secure with Muslims living among us? Maybe that's the question for the 21st century. And if it is, I don't like the answers I'm getting, because the answers are, you can't ask such a question. When you preempt the asking of a question, you make the finding of an answer impossible. And as a journalist, as a radio host, as an American, I insist on answers to burning questions. All right, guys, we're done. I'll be back tomorrow. More Real Truth. Hasta luego. Have a good one.